Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. Now, if you have any questions throughout the session, if you're joining on Zoom, just look at the top of the bottom of your screen. Wherever your Zoom controls are, you should see a little button that says Q&A. Click on that, type in your question, and I'll get to those at the end of the session. If you're joining us on YouTube and you're watching live, then just use the live chat function. If you're watching after the fact, just leave a comment underneath the video, and I'll get to those as I can. So my name is Jason Gabrinas. I'm one of Snap-on's national diagnostic technical trainers. Been in the training department the last 11 years or so, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep. So I had about 30 different franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they serviced in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. And before I did that, it was 8 years at Subaru. So worked in a dealership, and over time, I guess, just became the default diag guy in the shops. I always had the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type cars that would come into my bin. And before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So our topic today is continuing our OEM specific training series we've been doing this year. So tonight's topic is Volkswagen Audi Group, or VAG for short. Now, worldwide, there are a lot of brands underneath this, and I think we'll get to that in a few slides. But as far as North America, it's Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche pretty much. So let's start with the history. Now, if you know anything about Volkswagen's history, it can be a little contentious, I guess, to say. It was founded in 1937 by the Nazi Party in Germany. Actually, it was a way to kind of help economically and help the folks that needed to have an affordable family car. So the original Volkswagen was the Beetle, and it was designed actually by Ferdinand Porsche, who, of Porsche. Meant to be an affordable family car, like I said. Volkswagen in German translates to people's car. It was revived after World War II because, of course, there was that whole issue there. I was revived after that by British officer Ivan Hurst, who was stationed over there. Sales of the Beetle did well throughout the 1960s worldwide. It was one of the most popular cars in the world for a long time. And in the 70s, the Passat, the Scirocco, the Golf, and the Polo were introduced to revitalize the product line. So we need to diversify the product line a little bit. So they came out with other models. Now, as far as the Volkswagen Audi Group themselves, they acquired Audi in 1964. They acquired Lamborghini in 1998. They fully acquired Porsche. They'd owned just a partial stake before, but they fully acquired Porsche in 2012. And now worldwide, Volkswagen Group currently owns Volkswagen, Audi, Lamborghini, Porsche, Bentley, Seat, Skoda, Cupra, and Ducati, the motorcycle manufacturer. They also own numerous heavy truck brands such as MAN, Navistar International, and Scania. So you'll see those worldwide as well. So those are under the Volkswagen Audi. Let's talk some top models. So we have sales figures from the last 10 years or so. So from 2013 to 2023, their highest selling model, and I went and picked Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche over here in the US. So the Jetta, number one, over 1 million sales in that time period. Next one's a Tiguan, a Q5, and an Atlas. So those three are SUVs. So that's no surprise if you've been driving around the streets in North America for the last 5, 6, 7 years. There's a lot of SUVs out there, and those are three of them. Then we have the A4, the Q7, and then the first Porsche down here is another SUV. That's the Macan. So two Porsches on this list, the Macan and the Cayenne. And then you can see a couple A4s and then the other Qs on there. So a lot of SUVs on here. And I was a little surprised to see the Jetta was really the only Volkswagen automobile on there. We got the SUVs, but just the sedan, as it were. So no Passat in there, no Golf in there. It's the Jetta all the way. So thought that kind of interesting. But 4 million vehicles in North America sold total out of those top 10 vehicles. So we pulled a couple representative vehicles out of that we're going to look a little bit deeper into as we go. So we got a 2014 Jetta. That was the kind of the high water mark of that 10-year span. And it's the 6th generation of the Jetta. Jetta have been around for quite some time. A 1.4-liter hybrid, 1.8-liter, 2-liter, 2.5-liter gas engines, and also a 2-liter diesel engine offered. And if you also think about vehicles in North America, not a lot of diesel engines when it comes to cars. Anyways, a lot of trucks with diesel engines, of course, but when it comes to cars, not a lot available. 5-speed and 6-speed manual transmission, also a 6-speed DSG automatic transmission. So that's the manual automatic, so to say. Dual sequential. Then we have a 2018 Q5. So that's your top Audi on the list. And that was the top high water mark for sales that year. Second generation of the Q5 that year. 2-liter gas engine only. And a 7-speed DCT automatic transmission. So that's a dual clutch automatic. And then we have the 2019 Macan. That's the only one that made it to the list out of the top 10 anyways. And 2019 model year high mark for that. That was the first generation of that. It was launched in 2014, and the 2019 model year was the second refresh it had gotten since 2014, but still, by and large, the same vehicle underneath, other than a little bit of body work. It was offered a 2-liter turbo, 3-liter turbo gas engines, automatic DCT transmission, and this one was the first year that the gasoline particulate filter was added as standard. So we've heard of diesel particulate filters. Well, gasoline particulate filters are slowly filtering in over here in stateside. Over in Europe, they've been around for a little while. But gasoline particulate filter was standard on that 2019 Macan. So you'll be seeing that technology as we go, coming down the line. So some common issues that we're going to find throughout the line there, because they do share a lot of engines. Many occurrences of misfires. EVAP issues, just like pretty much any other manufacturer out there, is just very stringent. Map and mass airflow sensor codes. We'll see that as we get into the top 10 codes on these. And then timing chain issues can be had on some engines, either the tensioners or the chains themselves stretching, things of that nature. Which brings us to common codes. So common codes, we took the top 10 Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche. And you see it's all Volkswagen on here. But Audis do share a lot of these engines. And you'll see there's a lot of commonality on these. Also, another thing to note about Volkswagen and Audi, they can present codes in a couple different ways. So you can have your standard P codes, or you can have a Volkswagen code specific. So map sensor, boost pressure, right? So all of those are related to intake type situation, the manifold pressure sensor. Control module circuit low, that's kind of high up on the list there, I would think. And engine oil pressure, camshaft position, exhaust gas EGR, hide cylinder, so that's kind of a random one that comes up there. And then EGR again. So we get a couple EGR codes, a lot of map sensor codes, and so on. And then if you see the code down here, the way it presents in the table is a P0341-0. So it's a subcode of 0 in that case. So that's your top 10 right there. And I thought that was kind of interesting how the map sensor, boost pressure, all of that kind of showed up. OEM specific features when it comes to the actual OEM, what's unique to them. Not that complicated when it comes to actually the engine and the drivetrain, really, when you think about it. But one thing that they did master is VR and W engines. So this is the VR6. So it takes a V6, puts it in, instead of a 45-degree angle, brings it in a much narrower angle. So I can fit a V6 where I could fit a normal inline 4 with not a much larger engine package. So that's what they used it for. So the VR6 was very popular for a while. You'll also notice that cylinder 1, this is the front of the engine here. And on the back of the engine is where all your timing is. So that's could be, depending on how it's mounted, really close to the firewall. Makes it really difficult to get to the timing chains in some ways on some vehicles. You also will find a W8 engine. Funny enough, you never found a VR4 in production anyways in the car, but a W8 is 2 VR4s smushed together. So side by side. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the other side. So it's kind of like, they make it kind of like a W because it's also a very small angle. So it's like you get up and down and together 2 V's make a W. So that's your W8 engine. And there's also a W12 engine that is available out there as well. So you can see how those are kind of packaged together, front of the vehicle here, timing back there once again. So that's quite the large engine and quite the small space. And that's kind of the whole point of the W's and the VR engines. Another thing that's kind of unique with Volkswagen is on some of the models, you will get a sequential actuator test. This is mainly on the older vehicles, newer 19s and 20s. I think they kind of went away from this, but as far as, say, this 2002 W8 Passat, for example, it will sequentially activate each of the actuators for 30 seconds. So it'll start with the tank vent valve, then the secondary air control, then the secondary air pump, etc., etc. And if we look on the scanner, which we'll look in a little bit, it gives you a chance to go and cycle through them. So I can skip over the tests, but it has to go in that order, and then it just cycles around. So just be aware that that is important. And before actuator tests can be reinitiated, the vehicle ignition must be turned off. So we have to cycle the key, start the engine, turn the engine off, then turn the ignition switch on again. Then it will reinitialize. Right. And if actuator tests are reinitialized without the ignition being cycled, the actuator test not possible screen displays. So you might see that on the scan tool where it says, hey, I can't do this because you didn't cycle the key. So just make sure you do. All right, that leads us to tips from a tech. And this is one of my favorite segments in these because we've all had those vehicles that either A, they came in and I'm like pulling my hair out for a while trying to figure out what the actual problem is. And then you talk to a buddy who's worked on 1,000 of those same vehicles, like, oh yeah, it's this. You know, it's always that. Or you found one of those issues with a car. Like, you're gonna get a ton of them when we get to Subaru. Trust me, because there are so many weird things that showed up on those when I was in the shop, and that as soon as I found it, you just find them over and over and over again for the same problem. So this is the type of information I would want to know as a technician. Those weird things that happen. So first thing, coil-related misfires. So obviously we saw that there were a lot of misfires commonly that they would misfire on the vehicles. When you're trying to diagnose a coil-related misfire, however, if it notices that there is a problem with the coil, it shuts off the coil. So it makes it a little bit difficult to test the coil in the normal way we'd be accustomed to. So if you do have a coil-related misfire, you do need to take a couple different tacks in order to do it, because it will shut off the coil if it detects the coil is faulty. So I guess maybe that's one way you could diagnose it too, if the coil is not turning on at all. But just be aware that if the coil is not turning on at all, then you might not get power, you might not get your ground trigger and whatnot. So you may misdiagnose it in that way. So just be aware that you need to diagnose it a little bit different. Sunroof drains. Now, I found a lot of bulletins and information on problems with sunroof drains. And in this case, that's on the top, of course. I see a little puddle of water in there on the headliner. But where the problem lies is often on the bottom, where it kind of goes into the body. Because you have the sunroof drain come down, and then where it goes into the body, if that comes loose, or if it gets backed up and then possibly popped off. I've seen that a lot on Subarus too. But where it could back up and pop off, and then the sunroof drains into the floor, there's a lot of connectors and wiring underneath the carpet on these vehicles. So you could have a water intrusion issue, cause corrosion, cause any other host of issues with the wiring and the connectors that are underneath the carpet as well. So if you suspect a wiring problem, might be a good idea to pull that carpet and see if it got wet. And a lot of times it would be from the sunroof. Also, I just thought was interesting of note is as far as Snap-on's concerned, we run the special tool program through for Volkswagen and Audi. So if you need a Volkswagen or Audi special tool, it is through, we actually have to go through Snap-on through the Snap-on Business Solutions side of things. So that's where we do a lot of dealership work. Now, you as a person off the street wouldn't be able to necessarily go here and order it. You have to log in as a dealer in order to do that. But you could look up part numbers here and then maybe either A, go to the dealer. I don't think you really have much access on the Snap-on truck to these, but you could go to the dealer and have the part number that you need, etc. And you could go in and get it that way. Just thought that was kind of a nice little, interesting little aside. Also, some of the newer models, especially Audis, they seem to be getting into this a lot. It's a 48-volt mild hybrid vehicle. So it uses a 48-volt battery, and then it uses a integrated starter generator. So if you want more information on this, I actually have a class on 48-volt mild hybrid vehicles, but be aware that that is out there. So if you, especially on a lot of the start-stop vehicles, it uses that integrated starter generator to actually restart the vehicle after it stops at a stoplight. Right? So if you have this auto start stop, come to a stop, engine shuts off. To start it back up, it just uses that generator in reverse in order to start the vehicle. So just be aware that that might be a possibility, especially on newer vehicles. And they won't really market as such, right? The only way you're going to know is you can kind of look under the hood and maybe see a couple orange cables. But even on a 48-volt mild hybrid, it's under the threshold of where they really have to label it. So your mileage may vary in the case. But a lot of manufacturers have been going to this for the integrated starter generator, things of that nature. So just be aware that that could be. All right, now let's look at OEM specific scan tool functions. And there's a fair amount as far as when it comes to Volkswagen and Audi. As I said before, unique to them is that sequential actuator test. So that's available in there. A lot of ECU coding, a lot of what they call coding, which might not necessarily be what I would call coding, but they call it coding. Also, expert mode. Expert mode is basically like a factory tool. And I will show you on the next slide what models, I guess, or what modules it covers as far as engine for expert mode. Just be aware that when you're in expert mode, it's mainly for a little older vehicles. They didn't really come into like even the 20 teens. But you can still get in there and you might be able to do some things. As far as expert mode, also being like the factory tool, you can massively mess something up if you don't know what you're doing. You go in there and start typing random numbers and coding and stuff. So just be aware that that is something that could happen. Just be careful. Also, value blocks versus data stream. So the way that they present, at least on the factory tool, through expert mode or the factory tool, is it'll give you 4 blocks of pins. And then you would move to the next 4 blocks and the next 4 blocks. So up to 255 different individual 4-block cells. Whereas if you go into the vehicle specific side with the scan tool, it will pull up data stream like you'd be used to on other vehicles. So like a Chevy or a Ford or whatever, it'll pull up a much more robust data stream than you would get through the value blocks on the factory. And that expert mode would be bringing value blocks. So that's some stuff that we've integrated into the vehicle specific side that you wouldn't find in the factory tool, which is kind of nice. So as far as Volkswagen and Audi, these are the years and processors that are covered. You see it goes up to like 2003, 2005, mid 2000s. So just be aware if you're trying to work on a 2020, your mileage may vary. It still may work on some things, but it's going to be hit or miss with that. Just so you're aware that it's not for everything. And there is a manual on it, and I would strongly suggest finding it on our website, diagnostics.snapon.com. Go to manuals. And there is a Volkswagen Expert Mode manual. You can go in there and it'll walk you through a lot of the different features and functions that you would be able to do. Also, another good resource for this is not Snap-on. It is Rostec. Rostec has a wiki that is free, and that walks you through a lot of things because they have a factory level tool that they sell as well. And it's going to work pretty much the same as expert mode. So there's a lot of good resources in there. And like I said, it's free. So there is a wiki. As far as transmission relating, like I said, a lot of coding involved across the modules on the vehicle. So ECU coding, and there's also an adaptation drive. So anytime I do a repair, an adaptation makes sense under the following circumstances. Adaptation plays automatically in the next drive cycle, unnoticed by the customer. Print out the attached function description related to the adaptation drive. Anytime I do an ATF change or repairs to clutches or whatever, it'll set it to take place on the next drive cycle, so you don't have to worry about that. So basically, it's speeding up the process. Other tests that are available, park brake replacement. So once again, a lot of vehicles are like that, where you have to, when you replace the park brake, you have to retract the calipers. Brake air gap calibration. So when I do calibrate or when I do work on the parking brake, it has to calibrate where the air gap is there, so it doesn't constantly on. And also battery registrations. A couple other brands that do this, but when you replace a battery, you have to change things in there like amp hours, serial number, etc. So let's go live on the tool and see through those couple vehicles that we had there, what we can see. So first off, I'm not going to load a vehicle, and I'll go into the scanner, and I will go to Volkswagen. And then you see we've got three choices. So we have US vehicles over here, so that'd be US market vehicles. We also have European vehicles, and that's mainly in there for Canada. So if you are in Canada, there are often a lot of imported Europe market cars. So we brought them over here. So if we go into European vehicles, such as, I'm just going to pick a model here. So things like a Caddy or a Crafter, those aren't available in the US, but they might show up over there. Or maybe you have like a European market or like a Polo or something like that. So it's like 2018, right? So, or 2019. So a lot of these vehicles are not found in the US, but they may be found in Canada and definitely found in Europe. So you can use this software to get into those models. All right. So let's pull back to Volkswagen again. I'm going to try and get out. There we go. Then we also have expert mode. Like I said, expert mode is going to be ECU may be disabled or corrupted by incorrect use. Refer to the manual for instructions. Know what you're doing. Don't just randomly go in there. And then we can go in, and it's just going to be a generalized list of anything that could possibly be outfitted. Maybe. Could be some things missing, but it does go for quite a bit of things. Like, for example, even ADAS, right? Distance control, emergency braking system, things of that nature. Also note that they Volkswagen and Audi number their modules. So in this case, this is your common stuff up top. And if I want an engine, does it have a 16-pin connector? Yes. You can either auto detect or manually detect the protocol, depending on what it is. So you have these 4 protocols available. The UDS. Going to give you all of your hardware numbers and version numbers and things of that nature. Then you can go in here, things like coding, adaptation, long adaptation, security access, which might be needed for a few things, special procedures, long coding, etc. So all of that's in there. Let's go to special procedures. That's like throttle relearns, reset throttle bodies, reset injector adaptations, coolant circuit charge and vent function, DPF on a 3-liter, all sorts of different things in there. And notice how it says no active vehicle, because this is just kind of a generalized software for Volkswagen and Audi. So if you know what you're doing, it can be very powerful. But let's go in scanner, and I want to pull up my Jetta. There. Yeah, it's 14 Jetta. Now, also in Volkswagen, in the vehicle-specific side of things, Scan Tool has interrogated the vehicle and acquired a list of actual systems. So if I hit continue, it's going to give me what's on the vehicle. Or if I exit, it'll give me a generalized full list. And since I'm in a simulator, I get more information this way. So, code scan, of course. We got engine management. Let's go in there. Got to pull up my information there. So UDS doesn't have that keyword. There we go. So there's my engine right there, 2014 Volkswagen. Codes, data. If we go into data, like I said, instead of having 4 blocks like we would have in our expert mode, we're going to have a lot of data on one screen. So engine load, throttle valve angle, misfire counters, etc., all in one place instead of having to go through the different blocks. As far as functional tests, it's going to have that actuator test. Is that sequential actuator test we talked about before, where it goes through 30 seconds sequentially through the different actuators. Special functions, coding, a couple different ways to do that. EVAP test, EGR reset, throttle body reset. Adaptations, we can break stuff if we go in here. Be careful. And then you have to figure out what channel number you want to go through and do the adaptation. So that is a pullover from the expert mode as well. So if I wanted to go in there and say cell number 100, right? Oops. Hit OK. And then hit OK again. And then it'll pull in and it'll pull that adaptation. So whatever this is, I don't know what it is because it doesn't tell me. Looks like different resistances on channels. Perhaps it's sensors. I don't know. But I can change the adaptation value if I need to. So I'm going to exit out of that because I can't really do anything because it's a simulator anyways. Stop communication. And then let's go over to SureTrack information. See what we can find for information. As far as repair order information, etc. There's over 1 million of these on the road through this date range. And as we can see on the 2.5 liter engine, we get 152,650 repairs. Now, once again, it's 2014. That means it's a 10-year-old car this year. Happy birthday. Pads and rotors normal. Spark plugs, that seems kind of high. Headlight bulb seems kind of high too. AC refrigerant, that also seems kind of high. Then we get to our top codes. Map sensor, like I said, evap, misfire. Those are the top 3 things I talked about. Evap again, misfires again, throttle position sensor, cam sensor, all of these different things. Engine does not start. AC and up, that seems kind of high. Once again, back to AC refrigerant. So maybe we got some AC issues with this. Timing chain's on there. Timing belt's on there. This is for people looking up things in here. Let's go to a different engine here, a different variant. So let's go to like a 2 liter. 8,000 repairs. Go to the hybrid. I think the hybrid's probably got the least out of any of them. 1.4 liter. 3,300 repairs, right? Like 1.8 liter. That's got 72,000 repairs, so that's a little more popular, but definitely the most popular one's at 2.5 liter. For sure. A lot of engine options for that year, too. All right, 152,650 repairs. So that's our Volkswagen. Let's pull up our Audi. Pull it out of our top list. This vehicle. So it's a 3 liter. Okay. All right, so we see same type of thing, engine management. We're going to see a lot of the same type of functional tests as well. This one has a lot more data. So we got different data groups. But in this case, it's not just 4, it is a lot of different data groups. So a lot of data that can be had. As far as functional tests, actuator tests, this is actually a separate actuator test. Remember how I said when we get a lot newer, you're going to get in there. It's actually the wrong Audi, but that's okay. I can still show you this information. So you can see all sorts of different actuator tests when you get up to the newer vehicles, special functions, basic settings. So it's going to be different things that we can do in here, different tests that we can do, lots of different tests in there. Let me pull up the right Audi, though. That is not the Audi that I had for my... it was on the list next to the Jetta, but it wasn't the same one. So I'm looking for a 2018 Q5. So let's pull that. Audi. It's 2 liter. So in an 18, let's see though. I go into engine. And I go to functional test. Does that have the sequential? No, it does not. So 18, it has all the different tests available. I think that 2020 was actually for me to go in and show some of the security functions. So there's a security link on some of the newer Audis and Volkswagens on functional tests. What you need to do is put in a profile access code, what they call it. And it's just 4 numbers that has to be in your profile. If the 4 numbers match that you type in on the scan tool, then it unlocks. It's a very simple procedure, but there are some newer Volkswagen and Audi vehicles that have that necessary. So just be aware of that. Premium. And we'll pull up 8,500 repairs. Not a lot of repairs on this Q5. It's also not that old a vehicle, but pads and rotors, brake pad wear sensor. Remember, we got wear sensors on that. Thermostat, that seems a little high. But if we look at the #1 code, well, that's coolant. Once again. And then coolant bypass valve here. So it looks like we got a lot of issues with maybe water pump, thermostats. Water pump, one of the top ones over here. Thermostat number 8. Coolant leaks from vehicle. Engine overheats. Top 2 are coolant related as well. Could be fluid leaks depending on how they described it, right? So a lot of coolant issues with that. And this B7 is down here. That's a subcode right there. It's the same thing. And then the coolant bypass valve subcode again, 2681, right? So a lot of coolant issues, it looks like, with that 2018 Q5. All right, and then last vehicle is going to be my Porsche. Now, since Porsche has only been fairly recently been added to, 2012, right? Porsche was fully brought in, so it's not going to look like Volkswagen and Audi here, as far as like engine management and stuff. Again, simulation mode. But data, you're going to have a lot of different data, right? How about like, let's do cam adjustment. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so that's a short list. General is going to be a lot longer list, of course. All right, and since it's broken up into so many different lists, functional tests, actuator tests, once again, engine mounts, right? It's got the electric engine mounts, piston cooling jets, fancy. Special functions would just be a throttle valve adaptation in this case. Let's go into transmission real quick. See what that has. Functional test, special functions is a calibration that needs to be done. Actuator tests, calibration of the range sensor. All right, so if I go into special functions, calibration. So let's say we needed to change the selector level. You can go in here, and on some of these functions, it's going to have preconditions, etc. So in this case, it's just going to wait for my parking brake applied, which I don't have because I'm in a simulator. So I gotta back out. If I wasn't in a simulator, it wouldn't be such an issue. All right. That up. And then let's just pull up our SureTrack information as well. Let's call it a 2-liter. See what we get. 641 repairs on the 2-liter. Let's see if the 3-liter is more popular. It's not that popular vehicle anyways. Yeah, 280 repairs. So it's the 2-liter is more popular, but it's not all that common. Do repairs on it anyways. So things like pads and rotors, of course, valve stems, calipers, batteries, engine doesn't start, noise heard. So based on this, maybe some oil. They want to know the oil indicator, right? Things like that. That makes sense. Oil life reset. So that seems like that's something that's important on those. A lot of maintenance. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. A lot of maintenance necessary on those, I guess. Probably not a lot of repairs. Also, it's a 2019. So you're only going to start seeing those in the shops pretty soon. They're probably still a lot of them under warranty at that point too. So you're not going to see a lot of that data. But there is some there. So that's what all right. So that is a quick high-level Volkswagen, about 30 minutes worth of that. So that is my time. So with that, let's talk about what we're going to talk about next week. So next week is camera crank correlation, a very, very popular topic on a lot of the forums I'm on Facebook. Do I have a known good cam crank pattern on this and how to test it and why it's important? So we'll talk about that, how to set up the tool for testing and so on, and where you might be able to find some of those patterns. So same time, same place as always, 6 and 9 Eastern. If you want to join on Zoom, just go to snapon.com/OT to join and sign up there. Otherwise, the 6 p.m. Eastern class goes live to YouTube like we're doing right now. So it's youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics. Make sure you like and subscribe. And then if we go to the 9 p.m. class, it's going to go to my Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/SnapOnJason. All one word, no dash in the snap. If you want to see any of the other topics in this series, we've been doing this for a few years. Anywhere from intro to ADOS to cam and crank correlation, there's 89 episodes and counting. We're going to hit over 100 episodes by the end of the year. If my math is right, it'll be like 101, I think, by the time we're done. So we got 12 more episodes to do. over the course of the year. So I think that brings us to 101. Got to figure out something cool to do for 100. I don't know what it's going to be yet. All right, so any of those and anything in between, all free, 24 hours a day. Just got to maybe watch an ad or two. It's YouTube, right? But if you scan that QR code, it'll actually bring you to the page and subscribe you automatically. So that's pretty helpful. And once again, it's youtube.com/SnapOnDiagnostics. All right, let's get to questions. But before I do, I want to make sure I mention my buddy Keith, who also does free diagnostic training every week. On Wednesday, it's on Zeus and Zeus Plus. On Thursday, it's on Apollo and Training Tools. And this is tool-specific information. So it's going to be anything from let's set up your Wi-Fi, because that's important, all the way through. We'll talk through security links, Snap-on Cloud, how that's useful. Then he walks through a bunch of different functions on the tool, all the way through code to completion, fast-track intelligent diagnostics. How does that help me as a technician? Doesn't matter what level technician you are. Fast-track intelligent diagnostics is going to save you time, especially in that smart data function, because I don't have to build a custom list. I don't have to know what my PID trigger levels are. The tool does it for me. And then if I need to add any more, I can also do that. And then he takes a break. That's about an hour for all that. Then he takes a break. And then after the break, walks through the scope, meter, guided component test, all those different functions available on the tool. So it is a worthwhile endeavor to go and take his classes, especially if you want to get more familiar with your scan tool. Like I said, Wednesday, Zeus Plus. Thursday is on Apollo and Trike. All right, so let's get to questions. Got a couple on Zoom. If you do have a question on Zoom and you joined a little bit late, just find that Q&A box, type it in. Should be wherever your Zoom controls are on your screen, and we'll answer those. So David said, will a certificate be sent? Yes, it's usually within 24 hours. You should get it to the email that you registered for the class. So hopefully your email is correct, and hopefully your name is spelled correctly, because we just pull it off of that information. So yes, you will. Let's see. And John says, do you need different OBD connectors for the VAG vehicles? So on the older ones, yeah, like OBD1 you would. But OBD2, anything 2016, or sorry, yeah, 96 and newer. Holy cow, where's my wiring? 96 and newer, it should just be a 16 pin. There's no weird special connector like BMWs and Mercedes. So yeah, nothing special other than the 16 pin, unless it's old OBD1. Then it does have its own connector, but you can easily get that. You may even have it from an old scan tool. There you go. And let's go to YouTube. So Jaylee Lobo says, hello. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining as always. Nick is joining from the UK as always as well. So from 11 o'clock at night, you're a trooper, man. I'm 11 o'clock at night today. I'll probably be sleeping, or at least watching some YouTube, maybe trying to get to sleep. Let's see. Anthony says, hello, Tony here from Slough, UK. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Another UK folks. Santiago says, excellent. Thank you. Murad Alibia. I hope I'm saying that right. Powerful tool and Jason, how to open actuator test and live data on one screen. So that's going to depend on the vehicle. So with that sequential actuator test we talked about today in the Volkswagen, it doesn't open data at the same time. That's just a limitation of Volkswagen. For other manufacturers, we strive to get data on the screen when you're doing a functional test. So it really depends. I think on the newer Volkswagens, it would have the data on the screen, and then you can actually change what data lists are there. So it's going to depend on the vehicle. It should be on by default when you go into a vehicle that supports it. Like I said, on an older Volkswagen, Audi, and you go into those actuator tests, it's not going to have it because it cycles through the different actuators. But on a specific functional test that you may have on like a GM or a Ford or whatever, it should be on there already. And then you can actually go in and change lists. So hopefully that answers your question. Jaylee Lobo says, great info, Jason. Let's go for 100. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do, like I said, but I got a few months to figure it out. So hopefully it'll be something fun and interesting, or maybe it'll just be just another class. Jay McCall says the class was helpful. Thank you very much. And that was on Zoom. And then Gerardo on Zoom also says good class. Thank you very much. I think it seems like folks are liking this OEM specific class, because maybe you work on the same brand, but then a weird brand that you don't usually work on comes in and you want to know this type of thing. So I think this is it's a worthwhile class to put on, and hopefully it's a worthwhile class for you to watch. So with that, that's the questions. So thank you very much for those, and let's get to this one. So thank you Thank you very much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend a little bit of time with me. Hopefully you learned a little bit more, some nuggets about Volkswagen Audi vehicles. Hopefully you'll join me next week for cam crank correlation. With that, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a nice night and take care.